Today I'm going to tell you guys a story of quite possibly the most bizarre experience I ever encountered while being on the clock. I'd like to paint the picture a little further. It's either really late winter or really early spring of 2021. I'm 24 at this point, and I'm working at my second trucking job, as well as that's also my second longest tenured job in the transportation sector. At the time, I was working for a pretty big fleet. I was in the maintenance wing, and basically my job was just to order, identify, quote, or whatever, just truck parts, right? But instead of selling to the general public, I just stocked stuff in-house for the in-house mechanics to get, right? But I also had some oddball responsibilities. It's not uncommon in the transportation sector for them to take like 3 job descriptions and combine them into one. For reference, at another job, I was a parts guy. I had IT responsibilities as well as some foreman responsibilities. That was probably the most chaotic it got. But I remember the day that this all happened. It was on the slower side, and I think it was sort of one of those times of year where all the truckers put in their home time. So there really wasn't anything to do, and that kind of brings in a coworker that I had named Kevin. Kevin was a really sweet guy, very genuine it seemed, very authentic, was pretty crystal clear in expressing how he felt about things. And, by all accounts, the guy had a heart of gold. But also at the same time, speaking to Kevin a couple times, you'll probably realize that there's something not quite similar with Kevin. Like, something's missing. There's something everybody else has, but they don't have it. And it was pretty apparent. He just very much lacked like a sense of social decorum. So he kind of came off as a little like awkward at times, right? But, he's a good guy. And he's typically a truck mechanic, but they didn't know what to do with a bunch of people, so they threw like 5 people on this trailer repair job. And they throw Kevin on the interior panel replacement or patching or something like that. And for like a 53-foot long dry van trailer, essentially it's like, it's essentially glorified, not particle board, drywall. And, I shouldn't say dry van. These were refrigerated units because that was frozen food was like their bread and butter. But Kevin measured out a piece, right? And he takes out his pocket knife and he scores the panel of interior wall. And he sets his pocket knife down on the floor of the trailer. And he leaves it open, and this will become very pertinent very quickly. After riveting in this section of wall that I suppose he's patching, right, he kneels down directly on top of his open pocket knife. And I was not there personally, so I can't really confirm these accounts or not, but by all accounts, when he got up, there was a pocket knife sticking out of his right knee. Thank God we had a mechanic in-house that was a former EMT, and he basically field dressed the wound with what we had in the shop on hand, right? And he didn't even waste any time, literally just cut down Kevin's trouser leg and started going to town, putting and packing gauze and whatnot on his knee. And somehow, some way, instead of like calling an ambulance or like maybe having an office person like shuttle him. They decided that good old Austin needs to take him to the urgent care facility. We're nearing the end of the day, and I bring the work truck around as close to the building as I can, and I'm kind of cleaning out the passenger seat just to make sure there's enough space for him, right? And they kind of walk him out into the passenger seat, and next thing you know, we're en route to like an off-hospital medical campus that is pretty much like an urgent care and might be able to do a few simple surgeries. But before we go further, the road that was in front of my work was perhaps the worst road that I've ever driven on. Now, you might hear stuff about us Midwesterners constantly talking about all the potholes in the road, but I've got to tell you that road was the epitome of a Midwest pothole road. I mean, like, you could not go more than 15 feet without having to steer to avoid one. But Kevin's adamant that we need to get there right away, so we speed. And, because of the speed I'm going, I don't really have the time to steer around all these potholes, and I'd probably lose control of the pickup truck anyway, right? And I felt so bad for the guy, because here we are, I'm driving full noon, just like bouncing with all these potholes. Unfortunately for Kevin, with his brand new wound, he can feel every pothole inside of said wound. So as I'm like going like this, I've got a 6'4" tall man, built like an oak barrel, going like this in the passenger seat. And I swear every bump, it's like, oh yeah, oh, ow, ow, ow. And, thankfully, this road was only about a quarter of a mile long before we had to turn off. And at this point, I'm just zipping through county back roads, And that's when Kevin starts saying things like, remember, this is taking place in, like, generally early 2021. So at least the state I lived in still had ordinances regarding masks. So we're speeding en route to this off-site medical campus, and he goes, if they tell me to put on a mask, I'm going to tell them to suck my... I'm sure you can use your imagination to fill in the rest. I remember, it was just word vomit, and I just remember like, no, you're not, Kevin. I just remember saying that. And he was pretty adamant that was going to happen. But anyways, we finally make it to this building that we need to get to. And I get out of the driver's seat, and I go to the passenger seat. Now I got to help Kevin, who's admittedly much larger than me in about every sense of the term. And I'm like trying to army style like walk him, right? So here I am, and I've got like a tricep the size of my head around my neck, walking this giant man who has bloody gauze all over his knee to a wheelchair. So we finally get him in the wheelchair. I remember asking him if he wants me to push him. He said he had it, so he rolled himself in, and he does a very, very quick, like, 90-degree turn. And we're now, like, looking down this corridor, and at the end is, like, just a long desk, kiosk type of setup, pretty much like the medical billing center, and, like, the check-in, check-out area. And it's, like, a group of 4 or 5 nurses, and they all gather around each other. There's, like, 3 in the front sitting down, and there's, like, 2 or 3 in the back standing up. And they all go, hello. And Kevin goes, hello, ladies. And they go, well, what brings you fellas in today? And Kevin goes, well, ladies, I've been stabbed. And they all shudder in horror for a second. One asks really quick, I think, to reassure, like, did I really just hear that? And she goes, what did you just say? And I remember going like, he didn't get stabbed. He kneeled on his pocket knife at work. It's probably going to need stitches. So they took him back. I didn't go back there with them. So the rest of the story is pretty much just me sitting on my phone, scrolling through Facebook in an urgent care lobby. But he eventually came out about 90 minutes later. He had like 4 or 5 staples in his knee, and that and 1 day off of work and a regiment of medication, and he was good. You know, he was golden. But that is definitely like the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me on the clock. It's also probably the most interesting way I've ever made overtime. Yeah, that's about all, guys.